This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
Today we have an interesting subject.
It's very interesting.
But I'm going to let Joe explain it because he's the one that came up with it and he can explain it better than me.
Well, and technically, Cookie's the one that came up with this idea. But what she said is, well, you know, what about you and Sean talking about when you were kids? What did you want to be when you grow up? And then how did that change over the years? And then I'll you know, like toward the end of our conversation, there's a third bullet point I won't jump into right now, but it's kind of, it's the magical question I think that everybody asks themselves.
Okay, so and I know the magical question, so we're gonna hold it over for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about what did you want to be when you were a kid? How did that change over time?
Mm-hmm.
And then what you actually became?
We can touch on that if we want to.
Okay. Yeah. I'd be interested in knowing like how you landed in the profession that you landed in, especially if you went to college and let's say your degree is for anybody marketing and they end up working in something that has nothing to do with marketing.
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of people have that kind of a life journey.
Well, I've seen stats and they say that 65% of people with college degrees don't work in any kind of field related to their actual degree.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that most of that's going to apply to humanities and people get certain kind of, I'll just throw out like gender studies, for example, right? So a job that's specific to that, I know they do exist. But I think a lot of people get degrees like that are more likely not to be working in their field versus degrees that are actually very specific, like a nursing degree.
Right.
Yeah, like you go to school for a nursing degree, you're going to end up in nursing.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So when I was a kid, I loved reading about Greek mythology and kind of like Knights of the Round Table type of stories, King Arthur, like all of that kind of stuff. So as a little kid, what I wanted to be when I grew up was a knight. And I would travel here and far, and I would slay dragons, and I would get into sword fights. So much so that my mom was going to Sacramento State at the time, and she took me and my brother to the drama department where you could rent costumes, or students could rent costumes for like plays and all that kind of stuff. So my mom rented me like a knight helmet, like a tunic. I had a mace, and I wore this knight outfit everywhere: grocery store, school, riding around in the back of my parents' Mazda. And I kind of lived my knight dreams until I had to turn back in that costume. And even to this day, like my Instagram and my X feed is still a lot of like knights. Swords, axes, like I still find it absolutely fascinating. So I mean, as a little kid, I mean, this is probably like 8 years old. I wanted to be a professional knight. Okay,
so we're dipping back far enough to where what you wanted to be when you grew up was something fantastical.
Oh, dude, and I also wanted to learn how to joust.
Well, you can do that. That's what Renaissance. You could have done this. You could have become a Renaissance fair traveler, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just join a Renaissance fair and go from city to city. They do this and they joust at those things.
That or what's the place in Las Vegas?
Yeah, medieval times.
Yeah. I can be the Blue Knight.
I mean, okay, great. I understand the idea that, it's a fantastical dream to be a knight, but you actually can become a knight. There are places that you can work. It would be mostly theater and that kind of thing. Of course, medieval times or Renaissance fairs, which have an element of theater, but obviously they do the things for real. Or they will sword fight. They'll joust each other. Yeah.
We could do one better. You and I could start our own LARP.
I'm not gonna LARP.
We can.
No, we gotta LARP.
It's gonna be great. Like as people drive past the park and they're like, "Is that Sean?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that Joe? Are they LARPing?" Living our best life. Absolutely.
My dad used to take me to Renaissance fairs. He was into that for a while. I think my dad felt like he was born too late. He should have been born like in the, whatever, the 1300s or the 1400s. But also my dad, I was like looking at him going like, come on, man, you wouldn't have lasted. You would have been dead by the time you were 8. You wouldn't have made it.
Did your dad have you reading like Canterbury Tales or any of that?
No, he didn't. I'm trying to think of the book that my dad went to film school and he would make these student films when he was going to UCLA. And I know he did an adaptation of a book, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it, but it's about the last man on Earth. And of course, the setting is very, Renaissance, medieval kind of setting, because again, right, the world's over with. And but what you find out in the book, he's not the last man on Earth. There's a young kid who is the last man on Earth, or the second to last man on Earth, or whatever. And that little kid kills the main character, and I guess the kid now becomes the last man. Until another person shows up. I think the whole point of the story is that you're really not the last man on Earth.
When your dad took you to the Renaissance Fair, did you get a leg of mutton?
No, I can't remember what I ate. I was really young. But my dad got into that stuff. He did that short film, and I had to play the kid because I was the only one between me and my brother that would do this kind of shit. I always kind of think, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but that's what I was dressed in. So he had a friend named Jeffrey who made the knight helmets and the swords. Like
really?
He actually
That's
he
cool.
was like a blacksmith. Like he had like a legit setup. These were like legit pieces.
Okay.
And they put all this chainmail on me, some armor, and they gave me a sword. And so I can't remember, we were somewhere in Michigan, and there was this spot that had like a torn down like water tower.
Okay.
So it was all kind of crumbling. So it was perfect because it looks like ruins, and it's kind of out in the woods. And so he tells me, and again, I'm like maybe like 8 years old. He's like, so this is what you're gonna do. He's all, you're gonna peek from behind the fallen water tower, and then you're gonna raise the sword above your head, and you're gonna run it at Jeffrey. And I'm like, oh, okay. My dad didn't realize that the sword probably weighed fucking 70 pounds or whatever, just a big ass sword. Mm-hmm. So I'm holding it, and he's like, action. And so I look around the water tower, and I try to pick this thing up. I can't pick it up.
It's like a broadsword, but for an 8-year-old.
Oh my God! They had a strap. What he did was they took fishing wire, and they tied it around the tip of the sword, and then they ran it over a branch in a tree, and had another guy pulling on it. So when I raised my hand up, he's helping me pull it up. So that's what
that's kind of clever.
Yeah, when you're broke, these are how you solve these problems.
But
right?
see, look at this. 40 something years later, you've got a great life memory.
Yeah, but I don't have the movie. When my parents got divorced, my mother, I think, what was part of her revenge was to smash up all that stuff, which is kind of sad. I don't know if that's what happened. I just know they don't exist anymore, and I think it all disappeared around the time that they were getting a divorce. So
Gotcha.
Who knows? What actually happened to that stuff? Lost to history, lost media.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Lost media.
I like how you circled back on that one.
Right.
I think they refer to that as the weave.
The weave.
Well, yes, I still have nightly dreams. Did you like how I said that?
Yeah.
Nightly dreams.
Nice.
And that's, I think, one of the reasons. I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan ever, but there's a lot of that type of theme that runs through Star Wars, and I totally dig it.
Cool.
So when you were a kid, did you have like big aspirations?
Let me think about this. This sounds so boring. I think the first time I can remember saying like, this is what I want to do when I grow up was to become a cop. And I think that was because I was,
like
raised
the A-Team?
Yeah, I was raised on a lot of those, Chips, A-Team, Dukes of Hazzard, for whatever reason, the sort of cops and robbers kind of style. Mm-hmm. And I remember that dissipating pretty quickly, and I don't know why. But the next thing I remember was I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got all into animals. And I don't know when that changed. I mean, I do remember as I became a teenager, I really solidified what I wanted to do, which was play guitar, and I wanted to be in a band. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a rock star. And so that's the first thing that I can remember as a young adult, really like putting time and effort, and this is what I want to do. And it's kind of like being a knight, because the odds of becoming a rock star are probably just as good as becoming a fucking knight.
But at least you had a lot of fun doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
And that's such an awesome formative part of your life. Was your parents supportive of those decisions?
My dad was 100% supportive of this. But again, he's a film school guy. He's an artist. He loved it. He loved the fact that, I wanted to, create music. And he was always a great go-to guy for, here's a riff I wrote or a song I'm working on. He loved it. And he was very supportive financially as well. He, bought me equipment, at least some basic equipment.
Okay.
When I finally got professional equipment, that was my own. I had to go out and start working, mowing lawns and whatnot. But my dad did pay for, I wanted a particular guitar. It was $800. And I think I had saved about 5 or 6, and he covered the rest. So, yeah.
Good looking out, Pop.
Yeah, so he was real supportive. My mom was supportive of it in general terms. I think she liked the fact that I was into something. It's something productive.
A direction.
Yeah. I think what she did not like was the scene. And most of the guys I was hanging out with, you're talking about a lot of drinking and pot smoking and things like that. And she became aware of that. And then, of course, as we started playing, at our school. We're playing like backyard parties. We had, our drummer had a pretty nice house, or his dad had a pretty nice house. He didn't have it. But, he had a nice setup in the garage. His dad was a musician, so he was totally cool with us coming over, the type of parents that didn't mind if we were drinking or smoking weed. And we would have parties in that garage. We'd invite maybe 15, 20 people from school. And, we have, I guess it would amount to like a practice session, but they turned into basically mini shows.
That's cool.
Play like a set of songs. But when we got good enough and we started playing clubs in town, so mind you, I'm 17, 18-ish, and we're playing places that you have to be 21 to get into. So we couldn't even hang out at these places. We had to stay out in the back and had all our equipment set up. And when it was time to come play, we'd come in, we'd play, and then immediately we'd have to go back outside and leave.
Gotcha.
So the parking lots behind these clubs and bars became party places. And we were hanging out with people that were 21, 22, 23, 25, and my mother did not like this at all. Because she knew what we were up to.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. And she was watching out for you.
Yeah.
So it's good that someone was.
Yeah. But I was a pretty straight-laced rock guy. I didn't do anything too crazy. I didn't drink excessively. I did drink, and I smoked weed. But, my grades were decent. I didn't cut, class. I wasn't getting into trouble.
You weren't a truant.
Yeah, but I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. If you're a parent of a child and your child is 17, hanging out at bars on Friday and Saturday night around a crowd of people, there's drinking and drug use going on. No matter how straight your life is, you're taking care of your responsibilities, and no parent is going to be okay with that.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. So that was the first probably real, dream, was to be a rock star.
Did you try like sending demo tapes to different labels and all that kind of stuff?
Well, when we got down to Los Angeles, we ran into one little problem. So mind you, we went down there. It would have been early '93. So I had just turned 18. So I graduated at 17. So all my friends were pretty much the same age. I know like Kevin, our drummer, he was born 10 days before me. So we're basically the same age. Jason was, I think, 6 months older than me, so he may have been close to pushing 18 and a half, pushing to 19. Maybe he was 7 or 8 months older than me. He was definitely a little bit older than me.
Okay. And
he would always seem to be a year older than me. If I was 18, he was 19, but there was that gap where we would be the same age for a period of time. And Zach would have been 18 as well, so we're all pretty much the same age. The problem that we ran into was when we got down there, we would go to, first of all, we didn't know how it worked. So we're just going to all these, these fucking clubs that all of our heroes play, like the Whiskey and the Troubadour and right, the Rainbow and all these different places. Like we want to do a gig. And it was like, it doesn't work that way. This is a whole, I don't want to get into it, but it's a whole system. And, but the first thing, we did play our demo tapes to people. They didn't even believe it was us, because our singer Derek, who was this kind of skinny redheaded kid, he was raised in the church. He was a professional singer at 16. I mean, he sounded like he was 25 and like legit could fucking sing. I'm not talking about somebody that can sing and is untrained. He could sing and he's trained. He'd been doing this at this point since he was 5 or 6 years old. So when we play it, it's like, that's not you. I remember at least 4 or 5 times he'd sing a cappella to the promoter. That's me. And he'd bust out the verse or whatever. And oh shit, that is you.
That's pretty impressive, man.
Yeah.
Especially at that age, being able to have the cojones to go and do something like that.
Yeah. Well,
is it stupidity?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's a mixture of both, probably. We didn't know any better, really, and we didn't know what else to do. Like, the town that we live in, there was no, you weren't going to get signed. Again, there was no internet. So if you weren't at this point, the grunge movement was exploding. If you were not in Seattle, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, you were never going anywhere. Nope. So we didn't have a choice. We had to go somewhere.
You had to show up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and we didn't think it was a big deal to go move to another city. We felt we had enough money to at least stay afloat. We all got kind of weird, odd part-time jobs and, mostly day labor type shit. And we made money playing. So we would do shows where we would play originals, but we'd also do shows where we would play covers, and you could get paid, in a given week, we make maybe about $1,000 split between us. And we were living in a warehouse at the time, which was a warehouse that was converted into a bunch of practice spaces. And
practice studio spaces. Yeah.
So you weren't supposed to live there, but the owner of the warehouse, he didn't give a shit. Everybody lived there. So, we slept in our jam room, and it was a big open warehouse that had like all these old, pieces of furniture and couches. It even had a shower. I'm assuming a decontamination shower.
Did it have like the little chain that you reach up and pull down on, little triangle?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Decontamination.
Yeah. And like people would take showers. It was open. Like there wasn't like any kind of like shower curtains or anything. Mm-hmm. So like you walk in there and some naked ass dude just sitting there. Oh yeah, what's up? Hey, what's going on, bro?
How's it going? How's it hanging?
So, yeah. And you could tell how it was hanging. So yeah, that was probably the first real dream that I had. So yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Okay. Well, it's dreaming, I think, is such a neat part of the human experience. And when I was, I don't know, this is still as a kid. You remember when Nerf came out with those footballs? They called them the turbo footballs.
Yeah.
The little small ones. They had like the grooves built on them and whatnot. Yeah. Well, I was homeschooled, and this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, and which was very irregular. That's when people would ask my parents, like, I have a younger brother. They'd ask if there's, quote, something wrong with your boys, or are you guys in a cult? It was very, very odd. But my brother and I would play with that Nerf turbo football all the time, and we got pretty darn good at it. And so I decided that when I grew up, I was going to play defensive back for the 49ers.
Yeah. And
it was a foregone conclusion. They'd pick me in probably the second or the third round. And I had zero concept. I'd never played organized sports before, but I was determined, and even had like, I'm going to go to this college. I'm going to play in these seasons, and and I think having those kind of pipe dreams, even though completely unrealistic, it's still healthy.
Yeah,
and it's still something that nudges you forward.
I think every kid has that. I mean, at one time I wanted to play football as well. I was a big Raiders fan growing up. I think I learned early on I'm too small. Even, like, again, you're not fully grown. You're a kid. But even I was kind of, I think, on the small side compared to even kids in my same grade. Mm-hmm. So I never took football too seriously. Like, oh, I'm going to go, go to college and I'm going to go to the NFL or whatever like that.
Yeah.
Wasn't like that. And the other thing, and this is interesting, I forgot about this. There was a point, and I can remember specifically, I was in the 7th grade, where I wanted to become a journalist. I would read the paper all the time, and I would read these columns, and I thought that was super cool. Like, it'd be awesome to be, able to write all these cool stories. But I was looking at it from like kind of a columnist point of view, where I get to write whatever I want to write about and, make money doing that.
Would you ever do like a Dear Abby?
No, Sure, why not? If I was told that, well, I work. The funny thing is, like, what do you want to do? I became a journalist eventually, but so I did all kinds of stuff. You did whatever your editors wanted you to do. If they wanted you to do a Dear Abby, yeah, I would have done it. Sure, yeah.
I loved reading that. I had my first newspaper subscription when I was 10 years old, and that was always something, an area that I gravitated towards. What kind of questions are coming in from the public? Yeah, I think you'd be a great person responding to those types of things.
Yeah, I would have done it. I never had any aspirations to do that kind of writing. Oddly enough, so that period of time, I was enamored with it, but I didn't do anything about it in high school. I didn't like work for like the school paper. But at that point, I decided I wanted to do music, so I had dedicated, every waking moment to music. It wasn't until, well, here's newsflash, everyone. I didn't become a rock star. and
likewise, I did not play for the 49ers.
Right.
I own a 49ers sweatshirt. That's about as good as it gets.
Right. I own a bunch of jerseys, but never played for the teams. So when I did go to college, my first major was journalism. For a brief moment, I switched out of it for something else because I was more concerned about how much money journalists make, because they do I think it's the lowest paying career. And now, again, this is the late 90s. So it's not journalism like you see it today with the internet. I mean, newspapers are pretty much gone. So the traditional journalism was still fairly alive and well. And even then it was like, they didn't pay anything. And at one point I said, well, maybe this isn't really the career for me, because I like things like a roof over my head and eating are two things I really did.
They're perks.
Yeah. So... But at that point, I think, because I had switched over, and this is so stupid, as bad as I am at math, I decided to try accounting. Because
I could not see you as an accountant.
I know, but the only reason I did it was because I remember looking at like what jobs pay really, really well, and there's like a lot of plentiful jobs available, bookkeeping and accounting. I took one accounting class. I think I lasted 2 weeks before I dropped it. I'm like, this is not going to work for me. So I went back into journalism. Got my degree, and then got kind of lucky because the time I got my degree was when the .com boom was happening. So when I went out looking for jobs, I got like major newspapers hitting me up, and I thought like, well, that's how good I am, because I had busted a bunch of stories when I was in college. I'd gotten an award for one of my stories in college, so I think I was thinking I was hot shit. I'm this little golden kid coming out of college. But what it was is that all the journalists left, these papers to go get, twice the salary to go work for some random .com. They probably lost their jobs in a year or two when they folded, when the bubble bursted. So yeah, I went to go work for the Oakland Tribune and their sister papers. And so I guess to some degree, something I wanted to do as a child. I ended up, doing it.
Yeah. Did you
professionally?
Did you find it fulfilling, or soul sucking?
No. So my biggest issue with journalism was that the time I was in it was when the .coms were starting to erode on the papers, and papers were starting. This is when that decline. And they got more and more shifty and scandalous with the way that they approached how you wrote. They wanted you to make things as, I guess clickbait before it was clickbait.
Sensationalism.
Yeah, they want all that sensationalistic stuff. And that bothered me a little bit. Plus the hours were really long. And they were dumping more and more stories on reporters because, again, they were losing money. So we didn't have the size of a staff that we should have had for paper that size. So where normally as a journalist, you say you latch onto something, find out something, but this could take weeks of investigating. These are the kind of things that these are the kind of things a journalist wants.
Right.
This is the reason you go into journalism. But they didn't allow us to do that because you have to write 4 stories today because they constantly have to turn out stuff. So that was the part that was frustrating, is that you're just writing a bunch of bullshit. And anytime you got your hands onto something, the editors, and this is what I don't like about my editors in particular, if you told them like, I'll give you this didn't actually happen, but I'll just throw something out randomly. Let's say you find out the mayor of San Francisco is doing some dirty dealings, but this is going to take weeks of investigating, and it could be an explosive story, right? My editors would say something like, yeah, you can work on that, but I need you to do these 3 stories today. by 5 o'clock. And then you never get to that story.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the other major newspapers that actually have a staff, they break it. And then your editors get pissed off at you going like, you had that scoop weeks ago.
Why didn't you?
Right. And so that was the frustrating part of that job. But mostly I left because, one, I realized I was on the Titanic and it already hit the iceberg and the pay was low.
And there was a couple lifeboats with nobody on it.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, this isn't going to be around that much longer. And the pay sucks. And I'd rather go do something else. So I fell into teaching, and I fell into teaching completely on accident. And that's a whole nother story that I could tell you right now. But I'm going to let you go with
with my next
your
pipe
next
dream
one.
deal.
Because when I get to the teaching part, like I became a teacher, I can tell that story then. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, when we have to leave enough room for our magical third bullet point question for today. I got my degrees are in chemistry and math, and I had this. I wouldn't call it really a pipe dream because I actually had a direction for it. I did a short research stint at Virginia Tech in their chemical engineering program, and the direction that I wanted to go was I'm a big car guy, and I had this vision for plastic engine parts. And where I'm like, I had a notebook and I'm drawing things out. I'm trying to come up with, what if you did this XYZ compound? Like, would it stand up to this type of pressure? Like all that kind of stuff. And then in my laboratory that I shared with a couple other PhD students, it was underground, and I got to school before the sun came up. And then I left to go back to my apartment after the sun had gone down. So it started getting in my head after a couple months of just never seeing the sun.
Yeah.
And like living like a mole underground. Yeah. And I just decided like, no, this is not for me, even though I think I had the talent to do it. But I just couldn't see my life headed that direction. So I was still dreaming nightly dreams at that point.
Okay. Right on.
So mad scientist was like one of the things I thought that would be cool. I get to have crazy hair and everything and be completely eccentric and wear a cartoon dinosaur cravat.
Right. Well, you see, when a scientist is eccentric, they're geniuses.
It's socially acceptable.
Yeah. If you're an eccentric in any other field, you're insane. You're crazy. Yeah. You're a weirdo.
Exactly. All of the above. Yeah. But if you have a mad scientist who's completely normal, like that's weird.
Yeah, that is weird. And it's like, I don't trust you. You seem normal to me. You can't be that good at this.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that you and I have gone through like these different, like super crazy, one day I want to be this fantasy hero your goals or your dreams kind of come down to earth more and more and more. And then you get steeped in realism. And then you're confronted with the blunt truth of reality and where your life's headed.
Yeah, it's they call it the loss of innocence, right? The day that you turn into an adult, right? When you realize that you can't grow up and be a knight, and you have to go get a job, right? But I'm always on the side of, dreams never die, and the one thing I don't like about adults is that a lot of them don't have any dreams anymore. Like, well, what else do you want to do? I mean, the world is still your oyster.
For sure. Yeah. And it's amazing that when you ask people that question and they kind of do this big shoulder shrug and a deep breath and they're like, well, I'm just trying to make it through until tomorrow. And man, that's sad, man.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are in that situation. I've always tried to keep my mindset out of that situation because I got to get through tomorrow too. But that doesn't negate that there are things that I want to do. And honestly, everything that I've thought about doing, or at least one point in my life, thought like, oh, it'd be cool to be, a rock star. I'll try it, or it'd be cool I want to write a book one day, right? And was able to pull that off, right? So I've always in the continued mindset of, there's dreams. Everyone has them, and you still have them. And you should think about things that you want to do, and you should go try them or try to do it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Which is a great segue to our third magical bullet point that I'll let you kick off.
Well, before we get to the third magical bullet point, I'm just going to say, because I went into teaching and never had a dream of being a teacher, never was on my radar, but it is the most fulfilling job I've ever had. It's interesting how the things that I wanted to do, even if they did pan out, I may not have really enjoyed being that. As you get older, you change. So when I fell into teaching on accident, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second. This is what I would be doing all day. This is fucking cool. Yeah. So, I guess, sometimes you don't find your dream finds you.
True.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Or you could just end up living in somebody else's dream.
Is this the Matrix? Okay. So what is the third bullet point here?
So the magical bullet point question I think everybody asks themselves is, if you hit the Powerball, like crazy money, you don't need to work.
Right.
I think you and I are both productive human beings, and we need a sense of purpose and something for the greater good. But what would you, and if you had all these resources at your disposal, what would be your like super ultra dream job?
So my ultimate dream job, if I won the Powerball, would be to be a full-time author.
Ooh.
Right. I mean, I write already. I got a book coming out. And supposedly, I think originally it was supposed to come out sometime in April. Now they've pushed it back. That's on me because this is a great segue, because I decided not to use a pen name. I'm going to use my real name. So that threw everybody into a tailspin of trying to, got to change a bunch of shit. So just put delays on it. So I'm not using Sean Landon Clark for my books. I don't even want to use it for this podcast. I just don't know how to get out of using Sean Landon Clark because I've already committed to it for 37 fucking episodes.
And it works.
And it works. So, I mean, at some point I probably will say my real name and just switch over. It's just, again, you get caught in that groove. So, yeah, now it's like, well, I'm Sean Landon Clark until, otherwise noted. The good news is for your listeners, Sean is my real first name. Just Landon Clark is not my real last name, or middle last name, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, if I hit the Powerball, I would devote 100% of my time to writing, and I would just put out books. If they sell, fucking great. If they don't, that's fine too. I couldn't care less one way or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you walk us through or give us a visual of your ultimate writing like space? Like, would you be in a library? I know you like going out in public places and writing, which I can't do that.
Yeah.
But what would your dream writing spot look like?
See, you hit it on the head. If I had Powerball money, I would actually travel. So I would have a set of what I need to write over, let's say, a given period of time. Let's say 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I would travel from city to city and go to various spots. And it would mostly be bars or coffee shops. I like writing where there's white noise. I do not like complete silence. And I would just go pop open my laptop, get myself a Guinness, and just start writing. And then, when I'm done writing, the next day go to another place, maybe in another city, and do that repeat. So I would both be traveling and writing at the same time, but not travel writing. I'm not writing about where I'm going. Yeah, working on whatever wild book idea I have at that given moment.
It's very Don Quixote of you.
It is, right?
It absolutely is, 100%.
So that's what I would do. And I think, it mixes in with the fact that when you're asking about, like, if you had that kind of money, what would you do? I think most people probably would travel. It seems to be one of the more popular things. Like, if you had all the money in the world and all the time, what would you do? I'd travel, go see the world, which I think that's generally what most people would say. So I would kind of get both of that. I'd get my writing in, and I'd be able to go all over the place and wherever I want, and meet new people and write new chapters.
But do you have like a travel typewriter?
No, come on,
clickety clack.
That would be too eccentric, and then people, since I'm not a scientist, they would think I'm just insane.
I could see you at one of those little cafe tables in Paris, like
right?
clackety 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 clackety.
Right. Yeah. So that would not happen. Yeah, just be traveling with my little laptop.
Okay, I dig it. See, I'm on the other end of that spectrum. As I get older, I'm just a complete homebody. I don't like leaving. I don't like going to other places. Even leaving the city limits seems stressful for me these days.
Well, that's because you don't have billions of dollars in your pocket. Come on, if you were stupid rich, what are you worried about?
Well, one of the things, and I think we probably touched on it in one of the other episodes, is, Cookie and I have not been blessed with children. We both been cat people since we were little kids and crawling around on the carpet. We do trap, neuter, release in our neighborhood. I take care of 17 every day, and I'm not bragging or complaining, but I would say it's like one of my favorite things in my life.
Sure.
So I think what I would do, there's a place, I mean, a lot of listeners probably don't know about it, but it's called the Cat House on the Kings.
Yeah,
and
I've been there. I knew that's where you were going.
Yeah, man. It's like, it's basically, I don't know the lady's backstory or anything, but she's got this piece of property and basically rescued all of these cats. And
there's like, there gotta be hundreds, maybe thousands of cats running around.
Yeah, man. And they've got like on staff veterinarians. They've got, tons of people that are taking care of the cat. Like, it's a super cool thing.
Yeah, it's like literally like if you took a typical house, a regular house, and you just turned it into the world's largest cat house.
Yep, exactly.
Well, the cats just live in the house. Yep. They live on the property, live everywhere, but there's just tons of cats in the house.
I would like to do something like that. I don't know that, I wouldn't want to have, a place that I have to show up to per se and like clock in, clock out. I do have a lot of hobbies, but I think I'd find a lot of fulfillment in something like that.
Yeah. I think the other thing I might consider doing, since I still jam with a bunch of different people, I would consider gathering all those folks together and saying, well, I don't know what Powerball, let's say I have hundreds of millions of dollars, tell all these cats, like,
say you netted 100. So it's enough that you need to be a little mindful, but you can still splurge a lot, but you need to be, not run out of money in 20 years.
I might consider funding a tour, say, tell all these guys, like, look, I know you can't, if we go on tour, you can't work. I'll pay you for 1 year on tour. I'll pay you, I don't know, whatever they make it work. Let's say they make $100,000 at work. I'll pay you $200,000 and we'll go on tour and just rock and roll for a year.
That is pretty epic.
Dude,
you could design an entire book around something like that. Like, that's a great story to tell.
Well, there's a famous documentary. I've never seen it. I've always wanted to see it. It's called, I want to say it's either called Hair I Go Again, or maybe it's actually called Here I Go Again. Okay. I want to say it's Hair, though. And it's this documentary about a band from the early to mid 80s, a heavy metal band that never made it. I guess they had gone down to LA or whatever, and they did the thing I did, right? And they mined it, and it just didn't work out for them.
Okay.
And so these guys all go their separate ways, get married, have kids. Now they have these middle-aged jobs, and they decided to reform the band and make one last push and do it again.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and so...
Is it like on Netflix?
I've never seen it on a streaming service. I think I stumbled across like a trailer, like on YouTube maybe or something like that.
Gotcha.
But what I did see was, of course, this is what I think the documentary is really about more than just these guys, is that they reformed this band. Now these guys are all in their 40s. They go back out and they're doing it again, and they're in LA, and now they're actually around all these rock stars that did make it, when they were young. So these are the same groups of people that knew each other. My band breaks up. I go work regular job. These guys actually made it, sold millions of records or whatever. Now they're back in LA and they're reuniting with a lot of these guys that were in relatively famous bands, and finding out that getting signed and hitting the big record deal didn't really work out for much of anybody.
Got it.
So, and that's the impression I got. And they're talking to people, and I don't know if people know these bands like LA Guns, Faster Pussycat. These guys did it, one time. We're selling millions of records, and they're out now still performing, grinding every night. So I think the gist of what I saw when I saw the clips that I saw was these middle-aged guys that are struggling, in a club to try to get people to show up and listen to them play. They're finding out that the guys that actually did make it are pretty much in the same kind of boat. Right. Yeah.
Just different levels of the game.
Yeah. So it's that never-ending grind of, being a professional musician. Unless you are a Guns N' Roses or a Michael Jackson, a Prince, the majority of musicians, I don't think they make enough during their peak success, and with the record deals that they were signing, that they can just ride off into the sunset, and they're buying Malibu mansions and driving fancy cars. A lot of them didn't make a lot of money. A lot of them don't even own the rights to their own music. Right. The record company does. So they got paid, and probably got paid fairly well. They're getting a cut of the album sales, but they're pennies on the dollar. So during their peak, when Faster Pussycat's a good example, their first album sold about 500,000. Their second, I think, sold 3 million. And then their third album, I think, sold about 1 million. And then after that, it was just a big drop off.
Like 10,000.
So you're looking at guys that they were all over MTV, all over the radio. They're rock stars, but they had a window of a couple years to do it. And you see those guys today, they're not living high off the hog, and they're still playing and they're still grinding, and it's how they make their music. With what little fame that they were able to get 35 years ago, they're still holding on to that's what's getting at least some people to come see them. Well,
I do hope you hit the Powerball, and I do hope you go on tour, and I think it'd be a fascinating book to write on a typewriter.
I mean, isn't it the first book you would write if you won the Powerball and decided I'm going to travel the world and write a book because I won the Powerball?
Yeah, absolutely.
It just plays right into itself. Yeah. So, that's the story you would write.
Yeah. No, I think that would be great. And you'd travel around by hot air balloon and a jetpack.
I wouldn't do any of that. A hot air balloon I would, though. Maybe not a jetpack, though. I would do a hot air balloon. But that would be interesting, though, if you won the Powerball. It's like, that's a great idea for a book. You win the Powerball, and you decide to go and actually live out the fantasy jobs that you had as a kid. So you would actually become a knight. You would buy all the equipment, and then you'd probably go to some Renaissance fairs, or you would start your own crew and do some jousting. You'd be all over medieval times. You would live like a knight.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It'd be like the most legit LARP in Fresno.
Right, yeah. And so I could just fund my own rock band. Mm-hmm. I could even pay people to come watch me and make it, hey, look at all these people that are here for me.
We can recreate castle sieges. I dig it, man. Outstanding.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh.
So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Folks, thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark for now.
Dun, 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 dun. And I'm Joey Joe, the Facky Mac.
Thank you, guys. Peace.
Peace.